Since most people have never seen a psychiatrist in real life, their idea of what therapy is based on stories of other people, of course, but also of what they have seen in movies. So, like every year at IFFR, we do ourselves some fact-checking and ask ourselves the question, does The Sopranos, for example, give an accurate portrayal of therapy sessions? And what has, for example, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest done for the normalization of mental illnesses? Please welcome Professor of Psychiatry, Steven Kushner. Steven, welcome. Are you a fan of movies?
I think that's fair to say.
Okay. Have you seen anything on the film festival until now?
I have not.
You are based in Amsterdam. You're excused, but do you remember the first movie you saw relating to your profession as a psychiatrist?
I can't swear that it was the first, but certainly, like many people, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was one of the first that really struck me very strongly, because, I mean, it's a very powerful film and comes with a very, very biased perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take a look at the clip. We see electroshock therapy. I think the correct term is electronic convulsion.
Electroconvulsive therapy,
okay.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson.
Are you ready? Here we go.
Not the entire movie is like this, but it gives a certain portrayal of how it is to be in a psychic hospital. What is a movie like this doing to your profession?
Well, I mean, first let me say, I mean, this is awful to watch. I mean, it's hard to believe that there's anyone in this audience that doesn't have a significant emotional reaction to this. I mean, it's very dramatic. I mean, both physically and to just vicariously imagine yourself to do this. Second, I just want to say, this isn't what it's like to be in a psychiatric hospital. Some people do receive ECT, but it's a distinct minority of people for which that treatment would be indicated. That being said, you know, and I want to draw a parallel also to the last discussion, is, you know, film, one of the significant things is film and popular culture informs our worldview because we learn from experience. And because films are so powerful and emotionally moving, they gate the memories that we have. They gate the experiences, and they absolutely affect the way that we view the world. And it's why having a film with all white people makes a difference. And it's also why having a film that exploits the sensationalism of this kind of therapy can do a lot of disservice, actually, to an entire field that's trying to help people to recover from mental illness.
So, but you're saying this film did a lot of damage to your profession?
There's no question about it. And, you know, I mean, not to pick on you, but, you know, a lot of people leave seeing this film thinking, if I ever have to end up in a psychiatric hospital, it's, you know, one step away, and I may very well find myself on the same table as Nicholson. I mean,
what is the harm in this?
What's the harm in ECT?
No, what's the harm in people having...
Sorry.
What's the harm in people having a slightly biased view on psychiatry?
Yeah, I mean, stigmas... Look, if you would ask me, you know, stigma, what we call stigma, basically the emotional barrier or the prejudice about any situation, in this particular instance, having mental illness. The stigma of having mental illness, people's comfort to be able to share that with each other, to feel comfortable that they have a mental illness, is the single greatest barrier to people seeking treatment. For those of us unlucky enough at some point of our life to have heart disease or liver disease or cancer, in 2017, in most of the world, this isn't associated with a stigma. We can reach out to our support network. We can talk to people about that without feeling embarrassed, without feeling that there's a consequence to that. People with mental illness, by and large, are very, very concerned about what other people think, and frankly, that's because many people are very, very deeply prejudiced. To see a film like this, the disservice that it does is it really amplifies the significance of that stigma, because it basically says if you have mental illness, you basically belong on a table that you get electric shocks into your brain, because that's the best that we can do. That's how far gone that you are.
Are you any? But you are mentioning, for example, cancer. Has cancer been at this stage? It has been destigmatized, right? Every day there is a sport event, or it's this. People talk about it. Has it gone through a certain similar development?
For those of you lucky enough, I'm not one of those people. For those of you lucky enough to have a living grandparent, talk to your grandparent and ask them when they were a kid what it was like if someone in the family had cancer. 80, 70, 90 years ago, if someone got cancer, it was very typical that nobody talked about it. In fact, it was very common that older people with cancer were diagnosed and treated without them ever being informed that they had cancer or that they were receiving chemotherapy. The stigma was tremendous. Today, that's very much not the case.
But
People talk about it.
Are you saying that the same thing will happen to psychic illnesses? Well,
So what happened? What happened was we started to understand the disease. We started to understand that it's not some magical thing. It's not some contagious thing, that it's because you accumulate mutations in a certain cell that causes it. There's a biology there that's not objectively the fault or the volition of the person. We don't understand that yet in mental illness. And one day, this is my career, a student of mine is in the audience, one day when those of us who work on these problems, I think, just begin to understand what the biology is, and someone walks into a psychiatrist's office and we can run a blood test just like in any other department, say, here's the test, this is why you're depressed, and we're going to work on that and try to fix that, this stigma will just simply evaporate, just like it has for cancer and a lot of other diseases. But in the meantime...
You're absolutely convinced about this?
Completely convinced.
What time period are we talking about?
Well, it depends how successfully that we can do that.
Are we talking 10 years? Are we talking 100 years?
Well, the only question is how long the answers are going to come. The moment that we can do what I just said, which is the only field in all of medicine, the only department in the entire hospital where we don't run blood tests and do brain scans in order to make these diagnoses. The moment that that happens, it's all going to change. How long is that going to take? I don't know. I bet my career that it's going to be within the vast majority of our lifetimes here. I think we're talking about on the order of 10 to 20 years when this is really going to start to change. I wish it was sooner, but I'm grateful that probably it won't be longer.
Trying to find a role for cinema in that, but we also ask you to think about movies that had a normalizing role. So not like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but for example, what would you say is the best movie about a depression, or the best movie to understand what a depression is?
Yeah, the best is difficult. I probably should watch more film and TV than I actually do. My wife and I happen to be watching this series Homeland now. Do people know this? I happen to think, aside from the show itself, I've become fascinated. The main character, who's a CIA agent, has bipolar disorder. And without a doubt, it is the most accurate portrayal of bipolar disorder that I have ever seen.
We have a short clip of Carrie Matheson talking to Sol, her supervisor, and showing herself in a bipolar way.
The thing is, Saul, the avenues here has methods and patterns and priorities. A single sniper? No, Avenues here doesn't do that. He never has. He never will. He goes big. He explodes. He maims en masse. We know that.
Slow down. Slow down.
Well, facts are facts, and we have about a week.
What is the power of a series like this, would you say, for your profession? Saying that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest did a lot of damage. Is this doing a lot of good?
So, I mean, I happen to be very pleased with what I've seen here. I mean, you have someone who's very ill, but also functioning at an incredibly high level when she's well. You see very clearly that there are treatments. These treatments may not be ideal. They have side effects. A part of this, she really struggles about wanting to take her medications because of the side effects. She's a CIA agent who has a very high-level job. She's got to think very quickly and very clearly and says very openly, this medication really dulls my thinking, and toys with, just like we all would do, by the way, toys with sometimes taking her medication, sometimes not, trying to reduce the dose, trying to find this sort of Goldilocks place where she can maximize the benefit and minimize the risk. It's just done very, very well. And the message I think that gives is these are very real illnesses. There's a lot of hope with a lot of them that you can get better. There are compromises that have to be made if you want to deal with the treatments, but that if you do what is the standard of care for most of these diseases, you really can live a nearly completely fulfilling and very long and happy life. It's a message that I think, for me, resonates tremendously, and I think shows accurately what the struggles are, but also what the reality and the hope is.
There are a lot of directors and producers on IFFR at the moment. There might be one or two hanging around here with a beer in his hand, but can you give an advice for somebody who's making these movies or these TV series?
Look, again, I draw a parallel to the previous discussion because I think this is relevant. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, yeah? I'm a scientist, I'm a clinician. But to the extent that I'm a consumer of this, I just want to say I understand that many times, arguably always, a film is made to highlight a certain point, a certain perspective, to develop a certain idea. The key message that I would just say is be aware, be very carefully aware that in the attempt to do that, you have the potential to influence people's ideas about, in this particular case, mental illness, a concept that a lot of people find very interesting, but oftentimes don't understand, and that powerful films can really bias and influence people's opinion about what they think they know. And so to the extent that you demonstrate mental illness in film, just be careful, because very often people are going to leave believing that they've come to some greater understanding about what that means, and just realize that you're impacting the way that people think.
Can they call you for advice?
Sure.
Okay. Steven Kushner, thanks for being here.
Thank you.